Hey everybody, welcome to Off the Shelf Board Game Reviews. This video is part of a series of videos for Too Many Bones, an adventure system game for 1 to 4 players that plays cooperatively. Now, in this specific video, I'm just going to give you my actual opinion of the game. If you want to see a quick overview of how the game plays, see as a sample gameplay, or actually just learn how to play the game, check out those other videos in the series. Again, I'm just going to talk about what I thought about the game itself. Now, Too Many Bones undertone, what it is it's an adventure-style cooperative game for 1 to 4 players. It's a fantasy-themed game where players are each taking control of these Gearlocs, which are, if you ever played or read any of the Dragonlance books, you probably would just say they look like Tinker Gnomes. They're basically little gnomes, little adventurous, little plucky little heroes who are going on this quest to defeat this grand tyrant. Now, we've seen games like this before. We've seen adventure-style games, we've seen quest-driven games, we've seen cooperative games, and we've seen games that allow you to level up before, so none of these mechanics are quite new, but what this game does bring to the table that is new is a kind of a unique leveling mechanic mixed in with a unique strategy of how the game is going to play, with lots of replay variety thanks to the amount of bad guys and tyrants that's actually in the game. And I'm going to come back to that and circle back on that in just a second because I want to talk about some of the expansions here. But the thing that this game adds that's new is how you're going to level up your heroes. Now, we played lots of games before where it's an adventure style game, and a lot of your adventuring paths or your leveling paths are pretty much standard. It's the cleric is only going to go towards the healing path, the tank is always going to go towards the tanking path, and the adventurers and heroes are pretty much going to play the same every single time you play it. What they've developed with this game is they brought in a game where you have a lot of skills. Matter of fact, you have so many skills that it's pretty much impossible to level up all your skills and all your stats and be able to play this game the same way every single time you play it. Not only that, you have a game here that has a lot of potential with expansions, or even just with the base game, a lot of variety and a lot of differences the way these heroes play. Sure, you can look at the basic hero. I can just grab Pickett right here just as a perfect example. Now, Pickett comes in the game, he's just your basic tank. You can just look at him and see that he's your basic tank. He has a lot of hit points, he has a lot of defense, he has special abilities allowing him to be much more defensive. I mean, you look at his skill tree and look at the way he's leveling up, he's just your basic tank. But he's not really, because you can play him different ways and how you play him, depending on how if you level him up by going through the captain path, if you level him up through the hero path, or if you level him up any of these different ways, you can play him completely differently. And you kind of have to play these heroes differently based on the size of your party, based on the heroes that you're playing together, based on the heroes that you're bringing together, and also based on these tyrants that you happen to confront, because every single one of these tyrants plays differently, adds additional challenges, and adds additional complications on how you beat them. For example, and I know I like to pick on Nom, and I do it a lot, especially when I'm teaching people how to play the game. Nom can be an either super duper easy pushover fight, or he can be one of the most annoying fights that you can ever experience in the game. Just on the simple fact that he cannot be damaged very well. You have to hit him really, really hard just to do a microscopic amount of damage. But he is extremely weak to any kind of debuffing, such as poison, such as bleed effects, or anything like that. Those kind of effects kind of make him kind of a boring, easy fight. Matter of fact, Patches can actually solo him if you manage to get a couple of your poison counters. You can just kind of go in there, inject a little poison, and just kind of run away and watch him die, and it's actually a super easy fight. Because your eventual objective with this game is to defeat the tyrant. You defeat them, you win. Well, unless we're talking about the campaign, well, that's kind of totally different new, or totally different subject, so I'm not going to cover that yet. But what I'm trying to say here is what they've developed here that's on top of the old things we've seen before, such as adventure-style games, heroes that you level up, encounters, and a deck encounter that's going to change as you play the game, is they've managed to combine this in a way with heroes that play very differently, play differently together, level up differently, and you never really feel like there's a certain path that you have to play every time you play one of these heroes. Every time I play this game, I will sit down with my friends, and actually I have a couple of the expansions for the game now, which gives me a lot of variety with the heroes. It's not a type of game where I'm going to sit down and say, okay, one of us needs to be a healer, one of us needs to be the DPS, one of us needs to be the tank. It's basically, I'm going to look at everybody and say, what do you want to play? And somebody's going to say, hey, I kind of want to play pick. And I'm like, okay, so we have some pretty good defense. Let's look at the ability to keep our heroes up. So somebody may want to play Patches. And it sounds like I'm going down the same path, but depending on how everybody else plays, I'm going to level up my heroes completely differently, which is kind of a neat touch. And I have to, because before we even pick our heroes, we're going to pick the tyrant we're going to face, and then as we're fighting the game, that's going to judge how we need to be playing if we want to win the game, because different tyrants are going to affect different baddies that are going to come into the game, which are going to affect different way our heroes need to play, which is going to change a lot of things and adds a lot of grand replay to this game to create this really cool adventure style game. Now, I don't want to go into too many spoilers here, but if you start adding in some of the expansions, especially if you add in Undertow, you're going to see that a lot of these different Tyrants are going to play differently, and you're going to see that things are going to be shaken up quite a bit. Now, I don't want to give away too many spoilers because half of the fun is encountering these bad guys and going, oh, no, that's going to be tough. Oh, we did not prepare for this at all. We are about to get our butts handed to us very, very quickly, and then start the adventure all over again and try to take out the bad guy. Oh, well, of course, if you fail the bad guy the first time, you still get another chance. But sometimes you're going to look and go, yeah, guys, we didn't build up properly. We are not going to stand a chance. For example, there are some bad guys that will actually take away your stat dice from your heroes. So you need to plan for that in advance, because if you plan to have all your points in your stats, and then when you finally fight the bad guy, he's going to take all your stats, you're going to be left with nothing. Some of these bad guys have different abilities that are going to mess things up. Some of these bad guys have high defense. Some of these bad guys are so easily to take out with debuffs. Again, I don't want to give away too many spoilers, but some of these bad guys are pretty darn sneaky, pretty darn nasty, and knowing how these bad guys work, knowing how all the powers of all your heroes and everything and leveling up and going through this grand adventure is going to make the game a lot more fun. And this is one of those games that's going to grow on you with experience. The more you play the game, the better you get with it. The more you're going to realize that certain one of these Tyrants require certain strategies, certain builds, and certain things go through it. And again, you're not railroaded, but some things you kind of want to have some nice little tricks in your back pocket before you fight some of these encounters. And again, like I said, when you start bringing in these expansions, it changes up the gameplay and the game modifies so much because there's more additional things. Again, trying to avoid too many spoilers here, but there's more additional things, more strategies, and more ways you're going to have to play instead of just saying, okay, I just need to be the tankiest guy. Okay, I just need to be the healer. Let's go against the bad guy, bash on him for a little while, and we're pretty much done. Now, this game has some phenomenal amount of replay, and I've already hinted about this already, but just in the base game alone, there is a multitude amount of these Tyrants in the game. There are multiple Tyrants that all play completely differently, and they're going to give you different strategies, and you're going to play the game differently every time depending on which Tyrant you're going to want to play. Some of these Tyrants can make for a quicker, not quick, because this game is definitely not quick, but they can definitely make for some quicker games, or some of these Tyrants can make for some very, very long games. Now, speaking of length, while we're on the topic, this is a game that doesn't matter just how good you're going to get at the game, it's still a pretty long playing game. I like to say that this game probably plays about an hour per Gearloc, and I'm going to say per Gearloc because the game does have some solo rules, and the nice thing about the solo rules in this game is this is true solo rules. I can take one hero and go through an entire adventure and try to take out the Tyrant. If I can succeed and if I build up smartly, I can actually win, and you actually have a really good chance of doing it. It's not one of those things where you're going to be like, yeah, this is going to be the possible odds, let's just see how far I can go. No, you actually have a really good chance of taking any of these heroes if you play to the strengths versus the weaknesses of a Tyrant, and you can basically solo an entire adventure. So this game offers true solo play all the way up to true group play all the way up to 4 players. And at 4 players, that's when you're going to start seeing some long gameplay. It is very, very easy to see a 4 Gearloc adventure go 3.5 or 4 hours, even with players who are very, very experienced. And if you want to start thinking about the campaign play, you're looking at 5, maybe 6 hours, or even longer, depending on if you're going to do the Undertow campaign, or if you're going to buy the expansion that has even more campaigns where you have to take out all of these Tyrants through multiple adventures. And you're going to carry forward scars, you're going to carry forward skills, you're going to do all these things on this grand adventure in an effort to take out all these Tyrants. So this game has a phenomenal amount of replay here, based on the fact that all these Gearlocs are playing differently. Yes, they have their basic skills, but the way you're going to level up is going to play differently. You can have a healer that can be very offensive, and you see that in my playthrough video. I do some poison, which makes my healer actually do more damage than my tank, which is actually pretty darn good, and it saved us in a couple of those fights. Or you can just have your pure tank who can actually have some special abilities that allow them to do more damage to compensate for the fact that we have a pretty defensive team. So I'm building them up. Lots of replay, lots of variety there, and you just have tons of variety with the different Tyrants, different expansions. You have campaign play, and you have all these different things that add just to the massive amount of replay that comes in this game. Now, when we talk about player count, that is where this game can be kind of interesting. Now, like I said, this game can play really, really long when you get 4 players at the table. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not one of those games where you're going to sit there and say, oh, is it my turn? Okay. We all know those kind of games, those kind of games that are pretty darn terrible when you get a really long game. This is a game where it's going to keep the players involved at all times, whether it's going to be making the decisions on the encounters. Players are going to agree as a group, read the back of these encounters, and they're going to decide as a group exactly what they want to do. So it's going to keep the players involved in that aspect. Where you go into the tactical combat, it doesn't take that long between players' turns, so you do feel like you are involved in the game. But when you start looking at some of these grander tyrants, especially some of the later tyrants just in the base game, just to show you the final tyrant, which is Duster, which is a tyrant in the base game, and a hero in Undertow. Sorry, no spoilers there. But you have 13 days to take this person out. That's almost pretty close to twice the amount of time for Nom, and there's a reason why you get that many days. It's a tough fight, and you're probably going to fail the fight a couple of times, which it doesn't mean you fail the campaign. The only reason, or only way you ever fail one of these adventures if you go past your day allotment. So if you fail at a couple of encounters with a tyrant, you can still keep trying as long as you're not out of days. But you can see that this game can take a long time. So 4 players, player count, it plays fun, it keeps everybody involved, it keeps everybody plugged in, but understand the game is going to play longer. But here's the opposite end of the coin here. I think that this game plays best as a 1 through 3 Gearloc kind of game. Now, I'm not saying it plays bad with 4 players. Don't misconstrue what I'm saying. I think the game is actually a lot of fun with 4 players. But I have noticed that the game can be a lot more swingy. I have noticed that sometimes I've been at the whims of these level 20 baddies, which you may encounter before your party is leveled up. Because you need to understand that the way you're going to encounter all these baddies, if you haven't watched the tutorial video or if you don't know how the game plays, as you go through the days, you're going to take the amount of days times the amount of players, and that decides the level of the baddies. So, for example, in a 2-hero game, it takes 10 days before you run to the level 20 baddies. There's some tyrants, which means you'll never ever run to level 20 baddie. Well, depending on certain draws of cards, but I don't want to go on a little, a segue here. But if you're looking at a 4-player game, by day 5, you're possibly running into level 20 baddies. And there's a chance that your heroes may not be leveled up or may not be ready for them, because some of these baddies can be extremely nasty. And if you don't understand the game, you don't understand the powers, you don't understand the skills, and you don't know which baddies can possibly be in there based on which tyrants you're going to be encountering, because that's going to judge which level 20 baddies you're going to fight, it's quite possible to have some very unfriendly encounters. Now again, understand, you don't lose the game if you fail an encounter. You only lose the game if you run out of adventure days. But just understand that when you play a 4-player, it can be really swingy. You're going to either have fights that are really super easy, or you have fights that almost feel impossible, and sometimes they will be impossible. When it comes to the 4-player game, I never felt like it was a perfect balance on the fights, whereas opposed to the 2-player game, that's where I see and feel a lot of the edge of your seat. Every single encounter feels like it's constantly, okay, if I'm one decision away from losing this fight, one decision away from winning this fight, and it just feels like it's really well balanced at 2 to 3 players. That 4-player, still fun, but just understand there's a little bit of randomness there, and maybe swinging on both ends. It's either going to be a little bit easier, or it's going to be a little bit tougher, sometimes impossible, but just understand it may kick you in the teeth a couple times. Now, granted, there are some wonderful solo cards in the game. It does make the gameplay as a solo pretty darn well. And I'm going to say right out of the gate, if you just look at the base game right here, I'm going to say Patches is extremely boring to play solo with the base game. Thankfully, that does change with expansions and different baddies that have different abilities that prevent you from abusing the fatigue phase, like the mechs and everything from the Undertow and other abilities that can make it more challenging for Patches. So when you have expansions, I do say Patches is very fun when it comes to a solo game. But if I'm just playing a solo game just with the base set, I'm pretty much going to use Boomer or I'm going to use Picket, because they're the ones I have a lot of fun with. I do think that Tantrum can be fun, but he can be kind of swingy, and he's not really one of my favorite Gearlocs anyways. So maybe if I played more with him, I'd have a different opinion. But when it comes to solo on the base set, these are the 2 guys I like the best, and I'd say the other 2 are not quite as good on the solo game, but definitely very playable. So just talking about the base set, there's lots of replay, really good variety on the player count, everything like that. And then when you start talking about the expansions, you're adding a heck of a lot of extra variety into the game. Now, it's really hard to talk about this game without talking about 2 of the elephants in the room. 1, price. 2 is the component quality. Now, this game has phenomenal component quality. I mean, you look at these poker chips, these are extremely nice poker chips. I mean, you can hear the clicking of these poker chips. They're very, very nice poker chips. Every single one of the player mats is made on a mouse pad. They are phenomenal. These mice pads are going to last forever. You have slots for your dice, so if somebody bumps the table, you don't have to worry about your dice going all over the place. You have all these things in there, just phenomenal amount of quality. Matter of fact, you can take the cards that come with the game and you can spill the beer on them, you can spill the water on them, you can throw them in a bucket of water for a day and nothing's going to happen to them. Matter of fact, if you want to have a lot of fun, go find somebody who's trying to order sleeves for this game. Just look at them and say, what the heck are you doing, man? You don't need sleeves. Because they put so much quality into the components of the game. Even the deck boxes that come with the game, hard plastic. I mean, they went way, way overboard on the quality of the components, which means, unfortunately, that they kind of went overboard on the price of the game. And that's where I want to swing back to what I was talking about earlier in the game. What is the best entry point into Too Many Bones? Now, I know that there's going to be some people who are going to disagree with me here, but go ahead and hear me out and just understand what I'm saying here. If you get the basic game of Too Many Bones, you're looking at a lot of bones to buy the game. Whereas you get Undertow, the basic game of Undertow is a lot cheaper. Now, granted, Undertow only comes with 2 Gearlocs, which means this base game only has the ability to play with 2 players. Remember what I said earlier? 2 is probably one of the best ways to play the game, so it already makes Undertow a better entry point into the system. On top of that, Undertow has some more complex added things in the game, which I actually appreciate a little bit more than basic Too Many Bones. One of the things I really like about Too Many Bones Undertow is the fact that the battle map that you're going to fight on is a little more complex and it's a little bit more advanced. If you look at this one, you're going to see that there's extra spaces for different kind of baddies. This allows you to have robot baddies, which don't suffer fatigue and are immune to debuffs and poison and bleeding effects, which means you need to change up your strategies. Or sometimes you're going to have encounters on a raft where you need to keep this raft from being destroyed, and you're going to have baddies that are going to pop out of the water and they're going to start damaging this raft. If they do enough damage to this raft, it doesn't matter how many hit points our heroes have, how well they're able to heal themselves, they're going to lose if this raft happens to sink. So it adds extra complexity, extra challenges, and extra strategies that you need to play with the game. On top of that, the Undertow pack also comes with a diminished campaign system. I guess a diminished is a better way to play it. Because if you buy the expansion that has a full campaign system, it's extremely robust. You're going to go through all of these different tyrants. You're going to go through leveling. You're going to go through skill trees. You're going to go through all these things, scars and things you're going to carry over through this grand campaign. The Undertow has a diminished campaign where you're going to fight only a couple tyrants, but at least it gives you the feel of the game. So it does feel like, to me, you have some more complex Gearlocs, you have some more complex mechanics through the combat, you have some more complex different encounters and everything like that. So I think that Undertow is actually the better entry into the system, basically just saying over the cost. Now I know a lot of people are going to say, well, if you play this game, you're going to play this game and you're going to want to play with more than 2 players. Well, to be honest with you, if you're going to play this game, you're going to like it, and you're going to eventually want Undertow as an expansion anyways, because it has these extra things I've already mentioned in there. So I still think that Undertow is the best entry to the game because you get the best price. You get a little bit of stuff from multiple different expansions to get to experience those kind of things, and it's very easy to buy Undertow and just buy 1 more Gearloc or maybe 2 more Gearlocs and see all those things and possibly save yourself a little bit of money. And let's be fair, once you get in this game and see how great it is, you're going to want to get everything for the game, but unfortunately you're going to want to do it in steps because there is a phenomenal amount of stuff in this game, but the price is really high up there. It's not because the price isn't worth it. Just understand the price is going to be pretty darn high. So the ultimate question is, do I like Too Many Bones and Too Many Bones Undertow and all the expansions? Yeah, I have a heck of a lot of fun with the game. I am not afraid to admit, though, that there are a couple negatives that come with the game. I've already mentioned one of them, which is going to be the price of the game. It's a pretty steep effort to get into this game. Although, like I said, if you start with Undertow, I highly recommend it. For the price and the amount you're going to get in that box and the amount of variety, it's a phenomenal intro into the system when you compare it to what you're going to spend for everything else out there. It's also, the game can play a little bit on the long side. It can also feel a little bit swingy when you get to the 4-player game. But again, like I said, I've already discussed that and I've already explained that to you at all. So it shouldn't be a surprise to you when you play the game like that. The only other thing to mention about this game is a dice game. Now, they've done a phenomenal job of creating a dice game that actually allows you to mitigate the amount of luck that dice can create, while still having the fun that is created by playing a really good dice game. I mean, we play dice games because we like a little bit of randomness. but a lot of us kind of avoid dice games because we don't like how excessively random dice can be. Now, luckily this game has included a lot of mechanics to help diminish the amount of randomness you can get from dice, while still having that feel of rolling dice and making decisions, having the luck of whims of fate kind of work against you sometimes and make it so that you're going to have your strategies, but dice can sometimes be in your favor and be against you. Now, they manage to include things such as the bones mechanic, where if you happen to roll a bones on a die, it's actually not a negative. They've also included the mechanic where when you roll dice, as long as you're not playing one of the Gearlocs who has some mandatory locked bone dice, if you roll something you don't like the result, just take the die back and roll it again on a later round. Sometimes you may have to, sometimes you may want to, and sometimes the game is going to force you that, hey, you need to take what you rolled anyways. Sometimes you're going to need to have that heal just so you can survive another round, and you're going to roll it, and it's going to come up with a 2, and you're like, going, oh my gosh, I need something higher. I'll take it back. Oh wait, my guy's about to die. 2 may be all I need just to survive a round. So do I spend it, or do I take it back and hope I roll a 3? Or do I hope for rolling something better, or just making decisions like that? So it does have mitigation in there like that. On top of that, there are actually a couple Gearlocs out there right now that actually don't use the dice as randomizers. They actually use the dice as counters. And these Gearlocs feel much more strategic without having the randomness of the dice. So you have some Gearlocs who are really random, who rely on the luck of the dice to be in your favor, and then there's Gearlocs out there who don't rely on that, such as stanzas, such as the Steambot Gearloc, the one who causes you to track how you're using your resources, and they are very interesting in how they play. So they've done a really good job of taking a game that on the surface would appear super duper random and managed to put in luck mitigating aspects, putting in aspects that allow you to play the game without having to worry about the randomness of the dice, and also making a tactics game where the strategies you play on the tactics mat can matter, especially when you start throwing the expansion in there, where I guarantee you, you're going to have a wake-up call the first time you fight a couple crown and forget the fact that you need to stop them from battering up your ship. You're going to be out there going, hey guys, we're winning, we're winning. Oh no, our ship just sunk. We just lost this encounter. We need to try this encounter all over again. Or when you start encountering the mechs and you realize that the fatigue round is no longer in your favor, it's now working against you, so you see just how much it changes the game up, changes the gameplay, and modifies everything that's going to go on. Now, I want to take a few seconds here to talk about a couple different expansions that are available for the game. I've already mentioned the Undertow. Undertow can be a great starting set, or it can be an expansion for the base game, or the other way around. Just want to say that when you do get them, I don't suggest you actually mix the encounters, because the encounters in Undertow are very Undertow specific, and the encounters in the base game are very base game specific. There's a couple different expansions for the base game that you can buy though. One has the ability to play the game as a campaign, and allows you to play each individual Tyrant as its own little mini adventure where you can play it, put everything away, and play it again another day, put everything away, and go through this entire campaign. So it's really well done. It allows you to take what could be like a 30-hour type of gameplay and condense it into small little chunks and have a lot of fun with it. And then there's also an expansion that adds extra baddies to the game. Now, that expansion that adds extra baddies to the game, I really would like them to bring one out for Undertow, because I think Undertow, that's one of the things that Undertow kind of fails in. Undertow, in its effort to be so many things in one little box, has so many things in one little box, which means it only has a little bit of everything. So I'd love to see some of that stuff brought out for Undertow, but other than that, I think they've done a really great job with the game. I think Too Many Bones is a fantastic game. It's a great adventure game for 1 to 4 players. Plays cooperative, has lots of variety, lots of replay potential, and if with the expansions or even with the base games, it can have a phenomenal amount of fun, a phenomenal amount of replay, and a great adventure that tells a great story, thanks to the variety you can get with these adventure cards, the variety you get with the Tyrants, and the variety you get for leveling up your Gearlocs. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you enjoyed this video series. If you have any comments or questions, make sure you leave them down in the YouTube comments down below. I'll be sure to answer them as quickly as I can. You can also feel free to email me at off-the-shelf board game reviews. That's otsbgr@gmail.com. Be sure to answer your email as quickly as I can. If you enjoy this video, series, click that like button, click that subscribe button, and as always, thanks for watching.